You know that you want to be an author, but do you need to get an advanced degree or a PhD before you do it? We're going to dive into this topic, and it's important to consider your path. You have a few different options. Will you decide that you want to live your story and then share it? Or do you want to study the topic and then share it? Or both. From the perspective of living it, have you ever noticed that there are some coaches or doctors or people that have advanced credentials or certifications, and you're kind of like, they're not really hitting the mark for me? Whereas sometimes there are people where you learn that they don't have that official documentation, but you're like, wow, they're kind of impressing me with the knowledge that they seem to have acquired independently of an institution, giving them that recognition. When it comes to my first book, Confident Introvert, it is a networking human connection book. I was able to identify for myself that it was okay to not necessarily have a degree beyond a bachelor's degree because I am such an avid reader and I conduct my own studies. I've been in the market research world, and I thought that getting testimonials from people who are also reputable in the human connection space was more relevant and would serve my audience more than me getting a degree over the course of 4, 7 years and then presenting a book when I have this knowledge now and I felt comfortable sharing it now. Also, through the lens of a memoir, that certainly has to do with your life experience. And while you could, let's say, have a psychology degree so that you have a more thorough understanding of what was going on behind the scenes, psychologically, subconsciously, sociologically, with what you were encountering, sometimes it's not always necessary. In this case, I had advanced readers who are reputable in the psychology space. So they were able to lend that lens as they were reading it and when they wrote their advanced review and commentary. The second path, you want to study it. I met someone today. I went to the Painted Porch, which is Ryan Holiday's bookstore in Bastrop, Texas. And I met this woman who is an aspiring author, a current PhD candidate, and she is studying endometriosis. And we were talking about it, and she could decide to write a book through her lived experience of having this condition. But because it is a bit more clinical and physical, she's conducting research, kind of like I conducted research, although a lot more thorough and, over the course of many years of study. So I do get the feeling that if you want to write about something that is more clinical, you could benefit certainly from having an advanced degree. I'd like you to envision that your favorite author, who happens to have a PhD, also happened to craft and publish books before they achieved their PhD. Would you be interested in reading those books? Would you find that they had a sense of credibility? If your answer is yes, because they now have a PhD, that's interesting to consider, right? Where in your mind, okay, it was the type of person that got the advanced degree that you are eager to learn from. Versus if you would not be interested in reading those books before they attain the PhD, then that could be telling of being hyper focused on not necessarily the person, but the institution giving permission and credibility to the person. I think you can kind of tell where I stand on this, but if you are thinking of writing a book and you feel held back, these are questions that will give you a greater level of clarity and maybe allow you to take steps forward, knowing that your experience can be enough. And now the third one is where you have both lived it and studied it. This is what some people like to do, where they're clear on their biggest pain point in their life or their purpose. Maybe they have an underlying health condition, physical, mental, emotional, and they decide to go into a therapeutic field of study or a physician area of study, and they gain more experiences with the other and with large studies. What this also does is gives the person with the micro experience a macro lens through which to discuss their own experience. So I believe that this type of individual can really pull from sharing their lived experience, but also citing studies. Whereas if we were to pigeonhole, not to say that you can't do it all, but when you've lived it, maybe you are citing studies less, not always true. Or if you've just studied it, maybe you're referring less to your personal lived experience. Again, not always true. You can still do both no matter what. However, if you have lived it and studied it, you have even more free reign to go in both directions and have it all encompassing in that way. Are you considering going the lived it or studied it or lived and studied it route? Go ahead and let us know in the comments if you already have a book. Link it. I think this is a great opportunity to go ahead and share that book that is published. Or if you are in the process of writing your book and you have another question related to that, go ahead and plop that down. Wishing you a wonderfully creative day. Until next time.